Welcome to the Yellow Brick Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Helms, and today we are interviewing Amy Speer, a yoga instructor who helps us understand more about the connection between yoga, therapy, trauma, and also discusses Ayurveda and yoga, another field that I am still learning a lot about. So this is an episode full of very interesting topics surrounding integrative therapies in our field. And experts such as Bessel Van Der Kolk talks about how yoga is one of the modalities that we're learning is really helpful in healing trauma that's stored in the body, along with all the other wonderful health benefits. So I wanted to bring this into the therapy space today because we don't talk about yoga or body therapies, I feel like, enough in our field. And so my hope is that we can dip our toe into the water with this episode and episodes to follow. I hope y'all enjoy. All right, well, I'm really excited to do a podcast with you today. We are on a rainy Tuesday this morning recording this podcast, and I think there's just a lot we can learn from you as therapists, and I think, again, it's important that we talk more about yoga in this space, and for me, it's been kind of, in my brain, it's been weird that yoga and mental health and physical illness hasn't been talked about more.
I agree.
And so I'm doing all that I can to do outreach in our community, and I'm so grateful to be working with yoga practitioners like yourself that have that wisdom and that knowledge and have been doing this good work, even though, our field hasn't really been recognizing it until the last 10 to 15 years or so. But first, I want to go into our first four. So tell me more about what you wanted to be when you grew up and you were in grade school. So
my gosh.
Yeah, so as a kid, what were you thinking your occupation would be?
Well, when I was young, I thought, you know what? I grew up poor. Mm-hmm. And so I always thought, you know what, when I grow up, I want to grow up and make money and, so I can make my family's lives better. Mm-hmm. That's what I always thought when I was little. And I was in a small town, and there was one time I was like, you know what? I think I was like 5 or 6 maybe. And I decided to take off away from the house. Mm-hmm. And I went to the town bank. I think it was on a weekend, and I think they were closed. But I was like, I'm going to apply for a job because if I start this early, I'll be like running things by the time I'm an adult. I was really thinking like that.
Wow, man. So you were going to be like whatever it was, wealthy is what you wanted to be.
Well, I mean, not necessarily wealthy, but definitely in a lot easier place than the struggles that we were going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. If you're living that experience and you see the struggle of your family, and, as a kid brain, you're like, okay, what's the opposite of this? Mm-hmm. What could I do to change this?
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. Were you wanting to be like a banker or were you thinking like a doctor?
I wasn't really sure, but I was like, I think scientists maybe make money, and once in a while I would think, oh, maybe I'll become a scientist. But then I was like, you know what? All the money's at the bank. If I go to the bank, surely I can get some money there.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that, as a kid, that makes sense. Money is there, so probably the best way to get it is to be close to it.
Yeah, so, being a yoga teacher now is completely opposite of... Yeah, the money is not in yoga, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Growing up, it's funny now because I would agree that in either of our fields and a lot of the helping professions, I mean, unless you're a doctor, and even sometimes then, we're not usually doing it for money. If we were, we probably would have chosen a different profession and to invest our time and money in something different. So here you are, totally not in a field that necessarily produces large amounts of money for people mostly. That being said, I'm sure there's some, outlying factors and some, entrepreneurs who
like the yoga rock stars who are famous and are called out to do teacher trainings and things like that all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure they're making a decent amount, probably. But then again, you never know, too. Sometimes you find that you think these people are making lots. Like, I used to think, researchers. Like, I'm like, oh, they must be making lots of money. And then it's like, once I got to know a lot of researchers, they're not making lots of money. And a lot of the money they do make, sometimes they even put it into their research. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny how, you never know sometimes. But moving on to our second question, what has been one of what I kind of call your most learning moment in your yoga practice, or one of those moments that you look back on and you're like, ugh, I wish it didn't happen that way, but I learned from it.
Well, there's been so many different learning moments. It's, you always pull from your own yoga practices and experiences, more than just the teacher trainings. There've been like times like when I was in my very first yoga teacher training, and the yoga teacher would say, you should never do this very first thing. And then I would go experience several yoga classes, and I would find several teachers that still do that. That's the very first thing they do. And so not all yoga teachers follow the same rules. But what's especially been useful to me recently is, as I've been aging, as well as I've put my body through like 3 or 4 years of CrossFit, my body's gone through a lot more damage than it was in the beginning. And so I've learned more and more about using yoga to heal. So that's been very useful.
Whereas before you weren't thinking about it in that.
Well, I always thought, that it would be good for that, and hoped that I would learn how to do that one day, but I didn't really know how to put it together. But the more I experience with it, the more I'm starting to get where I want to be with it.
Right. Well, and it's like we call it like self of the therapist for us, but it sounds like self of the yoga teacher, where, you grow and gain your capacity to heal through your own healing. So that's really cool. And tell me more about some of your really good moments in your yoga practice.
In my own practice, one of my favorite things is, learning how to heal myself. Like I just said, I've been going through a lot of back and shoulder problems recently, and I've been going through a lot of different exercises, and the more that I'm going through it, I'm starting to feel like, for a while, I used to always do birthday push-ups every year. So last year when I turned 42, I did 42 push-ups on my birthday, and I think I've done that almost every year for the last 10 years.
Wow.
And this year, I'm not sure if I'm going to do my 43 push-ups, because I've had a lot of shoulder issues. But I've been doing a lot of different exercises, and I was able to do chaturanga without pain yesterday, and that really got me excited.
Yeah, no, that's important. And especially to be able to listen to your body, because I think it's hard, for a lot of people. They just kind of go out there and do something prescribed for them, and maybe the way it's prescribed, the amount it's prescribed, isn't always what they actually need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I want to side note mention my dog is here with us too, Nora, and she's just playing with us. So if we sound a little distracted at moments, it's probably because the Nora bear is like, hello, give me attention.
That's okay. She's keeping me calm.
Yeah, she's a good she's not actually a certified therapy dog, so I can't say that, but she's definitely a little lover and a goober. So, yep. And then my last question for you, it's kind of a little bit more, I like this question because I just think it's fun. I mean, even if people don't necessarily believe in it, but what is your spirit animal? If you had to choose a spirit animal.
What is my spirit animal? I don't know. A dragon? I don't know. Something different. I would love to be able to fly, and I seem to be kind of solitary, so maybe that. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to be solitary. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Yeah, and, it's not that everybody always has that, on the top of their brain. Do you know what your Myers-Briggs is by chance? I don't know if it's like a psychology.
No, I don't.
Okay. personality test. Okay. Because sometimes they have, like, they'll have animals for your Myers-Briggs, and so mine's a dog. And so, funny enough, I actually identify as that. And then I have some other ones I've taken on, pop sugar, that are very, very scientifically based. Not really. But yeah. But then, I got a butterfly once. So it's just kind of fun to get to kind of know ourselves by seeing what we relate to. But it sounds like, you like to fly, and maybe that's,
I think I would like to.
Independence and freedom, and so you have like an independent spirit to you.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that could lead into like one of the questions I have for you, because I know we've briefly talked about this before, but in yoga, you guys actually have a practice of, is it in yoga, or I could be saying this wrong, but I'm thinking about Ayurvedic practice. Like, is that within the realm of yoga, or is it a separate entity? Tell me more about that.
Well, most yogis, most people who have really studied yoga for a while, they really connect the two. Yoga and Ayurveda are really highly intertwined and connected, because the more you learn about it, the more you realize that all the places that you hold stress come from different types of trauma that have happened in your life, and it's really interesting, and so it's really intertwined. Like, you could release, you could be holding stress in your hip, and once that stress releases, it could cause you to cry in relief, because you've been holding on to that stress for so long. But it's not necessarily just physical stress. You hold emotional stress in your body too. And so it's really all tied together very strongly.
Yeah, for sure. And so in the Ayurvedic practice, I know you've talked about there are different types, like the different types they kind of...
The doshas.
The doshas, there we go. Tell us more about the doshas, and then maybe... what's better than a spirit animal for you to describe is maybe your own dosha, and kind of what that is.
All right, so there are three main doshas: Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. Kapha is water, Pitta is fire, and Vata is air. And most people are strong in one or two of those dosha types once you take a dosha test. And it's a kind of a personality test, but it's also just a kind of a body type test, and it's kind of all intertwined like that. And so my dosha is mostly Kapha and secondarily Pitta. So I'm a Kapha Pitta dosha.
And what is that? Tell us more about what that means.
Water types are more grounded mentally. They're more quiet. They're kind of slow to think and contemplate on things. They are very loyal, I would say. But their physical type is usually a little bit stockier and thicker and stronger. And Pitta types are usually, you think of a fiery person, you think of an emotional person, think of a redhead, that's a Pitta type. Yeah.
They kind of conceptualize, as the redhead, the fiery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strong, opinionated, goes after what they believe, fierce.
Yep.
Beyonce.
Yep. Yeah, and sometimes you might even think of that as like a type A kind of personality.
Okay.
And then the Vatas, air, can frequently be called airheads. They're also usually a smaller body type. They're kind of float around and do what they want, and their brain goes from this to that, and they're usually not as strong. But everybody has their different strengths and weaknesses. Every emotional type or dosha type does too. So it's,
Yeah, it's good to be able to integrate, I'm sure, all of them. Like, they do have their strengths, they do have their areas of struggle too, just like humans.
And even different dosha types like different styles of yoga. Like a kapha type would like to hold a pose, which takes more strength. A vata type likes to move from pose to pose to pose, which doesn't take any strength, but it just lets their mind wander. And so sometimes it's good for you, if you're a kapha, to do a more vata practice to bring you more balance, or sometimes it's good if you're a vata to do more of a kapha practice to bring you more balance. And so you can kind of balance out your doshas with your yoga practice too.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So is one of the goals of yoga, or the practice of yoga, to find more of a balance in who we are?
Yes, exactly. It's it helps you balance in so many different ways. Not only does it help you balance out your personality, but it also is meant to help balance your body. So if you have a good, solid yoga practice that's executed correctly, you're going to strengthen every posing muscle group equally, so that you don't have any weaknesses in any of your joints. So it makes your whole body more balanced. There's also even the fact that we do balance poses, where you learn how to balance on one leg, or learn how to balance holding different positions. And so it really, yoga works on balance in so many different ways.
Right. So not just the emotional balance, but physical balance, balance of your physiology.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And do you find that, like, naturally as people balance their physiology, that relates to their emotional balance as well, or are they two separate things that they work on?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think that usually the places that are weak are the places that are damaged emotionally. And when you strengthen them physically, you also strengthen them emotionally.
Yeah, I could see that. I've learned, probably a really tiny amount in the world of our brain chemistry, but even finding balance in our brain, which literally transcribes to how our bodies manifest physically, is a really important part of our health, because oftentimes, developmentally, as we have grown, even from infant stages and in the womb, there are critical stages of our development that if we, for whatever reason, didn't get that the stimulus we needed, or we didn't grow in that area the strength we needed to, we can grow in other areas of our brain and create imbalances within our brain. And that, again, that manifesting physically as well. And it's been but the cool thing about that too, like you said, is we can heal those things. And again, people aren't necessarily connecting the dots that relates to their trauma. And I think sometimes trauma or emotional stuff can sound more severe than it is, but it could be whatever happened in your life, or things that didn't happen at a certain age, that created that imbalance, or for things to change in the way that they were growing in the archetype of your brain. And I mean, sometimes there's beauty in how resilient our brains are, and gaining strength in other areas, but then again, they become the things that can cause us the imbalance and the emotional distress and all of that good stuff. So that's really cool that, I like to connect those dots, just for myself and for people, because I think that they don't always understand, how does yoga even have anything to do with helping people and their mental health?
I'm surprised how there's so many people that don't see the connection. I was especially surprised when I told my husband that I was connecting with you to work at a therapy place, that my husband was like, really? Why? I was like, what?
Right. I mean, even people that do yoga, right? They're not connecting those dots. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I don't know if you have, because I don't have the answer to this, but, my brain's always going to the place of, how do we connect those dots, or what language do you feel like would be helpful for people when they're not connecting the dots with yoga? I don't know if you have any input in that, because I feel like that's our biggest challenge, not only nationwide, but especially in Wichita, where I feel like culturally, maybe not as many people are open to the practice of yoga as being a means of healing their emotional trauma, even physical trauma. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if it's just kind of one of those question marks.
I think it's just one of those things that just teaching, like, and getting information out there, like this podcast. And anybody who hears this is going to probably have a light bulb moment, I imagine, be like, oh, I see how those things do work together. Okay, maybe yoga is something I really do need to do more than I realized.
Yeah. Well, and even in our therapy community, because I know a lot of, like, this podcast specifically is geared towards therapists, but also, I mean, anybody who's interested in therapy, psychology, healing themselves. You know, I found a lot of therapists don't do a yoga practice either, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say, like, because I feel the same way about therapy. It's not to say that that is the only way of healing certain things, but it's a really good way to do it. And so it surprises me that not more people are making that
it's a more holistic way to look at yourself. And a lot of people just think, oh, my brain is broken, fix my brain. They don't realize that it's all connected.
Yeah, it is. And even I remember when I first started doing my own yoga practice and mindfulness stuff, like, I really didn't like it because I had a very busy brain. And so I felt like I was doing it wrong and something was wrong with me. And then the more that I was able to experience it in different ways, it started to kind of, like, slowly creep in. Like, I couldn't even give language to what it was doing, but it would just, like, would, like, kind of ninja creep into, like, my system, my nervous system even. And I've learned how that impacts my ability to be more balanced. I still am a cognitive type. I still have to regulate my brain that naturally kind of defaults into a certain way of being due to my own stuff. But when I practice and I make that an important part of my life, like, I feel so much better. I make better choices, which lead to me being happier. It impacts my practice of my job. So it's interesting because sometimes I can't always give language to how it's helped me even. But I'm trying to, so that I can communicate to, like, the type of person I used to be, who used to be like, yeah, yoga is great for those, like, bendy, flexible, calm, naturally Zen people that don't have, monkey minds.
Yeah, there's so many people that don't realize that yoga can help with the monkey minds. Just because maybe they've tried it once and they found it frustrating, but those are the ones that actually need to do it the most. Those are the ones that'll get the most benefits out of it.
I know. It's true. So true, even though, my brain, when it first thinks about it, is like, nope, I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to work on my stuff and do the thing that is hard for me. Can I just do something else that's easier and also gives me results? So, Well, I see that a lot in, like, I don't know if you would conceptualize it this way, but I see it as, like, people not wanting to be in their bodies in a lot of ways, like, not feeling comfort and regulation. And so that leads to them, turning to substances or addiction of any sort to regulate their bodies. Well,
and not just that. Well, I mean, unless you want to say workaholics are addicted to work, so maybe that type of addiction too, because there's so many people that are like, oh, I don't want to stop and think about myself and be in my body. I would rather just throw myself into work or, find all these other things to do to distract myself from being me.
Right.
But I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, workaholism and also, and even for myself, I used to have this perspective that's like, I don't have time to do this practice, right? And it's I remember a funny quote that was about meditation. And to me, yoga is, like, the way that I'm able to get into a good space for meditation. But, like, it was like the people, if you don't have time for 10 minutes of meditation, the quote went like, then you need an hour of meditation. Like, it was like this joke of, like, the people who say they don't have time need it so much more. Well,
not only that, but also they have proven in some studies, or I've heard, that if you spend some time working on your brain in that way, meditating, your mind will actually be more organized and you'll be able to get through your work quicker throughout the day. So it actually gives you more time just to sit down and organize your thoughts for a moment.
Yes. Yeah, no, there is studies on that. I know that Bessel Van Der Kolk and Dan Siegel are some of the pioneers in that science, but it's true that there's important things that we have to do for our brain when it comes to our practice of yoga and nervous system regulation and our nutrition, that when we do those things, we are so much more in flow and have productive work days versus, and I know, I mean, I'm guilty of this too. Even yesterday was probably a day where I was dragging more than I would be, where it's like, you know, you could have 3 hours of your day pass by, and I know I probably only got like 15 minutes worth of productivity that, you know, I was supposed to get done in that 3 hours. Yeah. Where if I had maybe made more space and done things a little differently, and I'm still a work in progress learning this for myself.
Yeah, everyone is.
You know, like it would have gone differently. And, you know, I'm talking about this stuff, and I still have my own growth to be made and practicing it more in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you take a moment to create some quiet in your mind, usually that will translate into you being more mindful throughout your life, as well as more efficient throughout your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Another thing I want to point out for therapists, because we're mostly talking to a therapist audience, is what I've found is that I know it's incredibly important as therapists, and I'm sure as a yoga practitioner as well, and you can speak to that more, but to be able to have what we call a non-anxious presence, where we're really able to be with our clients and be regulated, and that therapy isn't like this anxiety-producing experience for us on the other end. Yeah. And I don't know that I would be the non-anxious presence that I am today, and again, I still have, you know, room to work there, but I don't think I would be that person and be as effective in my job if I hadn't done some of the body work that I've done over the last 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I absolutely agree. Even when I'm teaching a yoga practice, there are moments when I get anxious, like, oh my gosh, am I going to teach these people right? Are they going to see through me and think that I'm, I don't know, whatever.
Imposter syndrome, yeah.
Yeah. And so I have moments like that, even though I've been teaching yoga for 10 years. I feel like it is important. Like, I'm going to give them a much better yoga practice on the times that I'm feeling more calm and confident than the ones that I'm feeling crazy like that.
Right. Where we are able to not make it about us and our body regulation, right? And we're just able to be in that moment with people. Yeah. So I don't know that people have always connected those dots either, because I know a lot of therapists, especially newbie therapists, struggle more so with that anxiety. Yeah. People can feel, you know what I mean? They feel your energy.
Exactly. And then when I'm feeling like that, since I'm so aware that they can feel my energy, I'm like, oh no, I'm ruining this yoga lesson. And then I get even more stressed, and then I'm like, no, calm down. And I just have to calm myself down for a moment.
Yeah, and yoga on yourself.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and then sometimes we end up holding a pose for an impossibly long time because I'm calming myself down. But that's okay. It's good.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to go with that moment. And as a therapist, there are moments where I'm like, all right, I tell my clients, I'm like, all right, I just need a minute to kind of process, because my brain isn't in the space it needs to be in.
If you're a yoga teacher, you can just put them in downward dog or child's pose, and you don't even have to say anything.
It's good to know. I'll just do that next time in my therapy session. I'm just going to go into downward dog. They'll be like, although some of my clients who know me would probably just laugh. That's great. That's really cool. And I know recently, you've done some studying as well on trauma-informed yoga. Yeah. And that practice is very different from the regular yoga. So tell us a little bit more about the differences in that practice.
So when I'm teaching a normal yoga practice, I'm telling everybody, okay, be aware of what you're feeling here, because you don't want to feel there because that could hurt your joint, and don't do this, and make sure you're doing that. And I'm telling them how exactly to do every pose. And
you're even maybe correcting their body position.
Yes. Yeah. And But for people who have been through a lot of trauma, being told what to do is more trauma. And so those people need to be allowed the space and time to kind of figure it out on their own. So you don't tell them how to do the pose. You ask, and you don't even tell them what pose to do. You ask them if they would like to join you in a pose, and then you ask them if they would like to move around a little bit and tell them to find a comfortable way to do it, and kind of feel it out. And so it's a little bit, it's way different from anything. If I see them doing something that I think is, that's potentially dangerous for this joint, then I'm not allowed to say, you shouldn't do that, because no, they have to feel it out, because we want them to be emotionally supported in a trauma yoga class instead of all of the physical stuff.
Well, and it sounds like too, a big part of trauma that we learn about is the stuckness people can feel, but also the disempowerment
exactly
that people can feel. And so,
exactly. So when I'm telling them what to do, that's disempowering them. So I need to allow them to decide what to do so that I can empower them to feel their bodies. Yeah.
And so by letting them have the space to have more of that freedom and making it less about form and technique, which is also, it has its place, right? And I think that's, again, for a person in a different space working on different things. But
yeah, exactly.
When you're working with somebody who's really, in the throes and struggling through processing their trauma and that hasn't found their power, that's a physical way of letting them do that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's really cool because, again, I think that, and even in the therapy room, there used to be a lot of therapists that would tell people how to do things and give them advice and be more of the experts. And what we've learned over time, too, is that especially when it comes with people that are struggling with trauma, and what I found, too, is to a certain extent, some people can't even verbalize what's going on. And then somebody is coming in and stepping in and trying to tell them different things and how to do things, but that's not what they're needing. They're needing to learn how to find their voice.
Yeah.
And how to speak of those things or get into, and I think, again, physically sometimes that's the way to do it, is to get them to do physical healing, even though I think as therapists we can have a hard time letting that go because we want to do all of it. Yeah. We want to talk it through. We want to do all of it in the therapy room, myself included, because I'm a very cognitive type. I'm like, yes, let's stay here.
And there's still a lot of work to be done in the therapy room for that group of people. But yoga is hugely important for that group of people too. It can help them to feel their bodies and find control of themselves personally.
Yes, in ways that you can't talk through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, too, is I think people don't realize we need people to build a bridge. Because you're right, therapy work is important and we can do a lot of healing there. But we can't if people aren't even able to get to their prefrontal cortex because there's stuff stored in the lower regions of their brain and in their bodies that keep them from being able to do that work in therapy. Yeah. And so I see yoga as being a bridge builder. Of making, because again, sometimes people unfortunately get labeled as they're not the right people for therapy, or they're just not, teachable. But I think sometimes we have to let our egos go to the side and say, maybe we're not teaching them the way they learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the way they need to learn.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I know I keep on speaking about my own experience, but I'm trying to do it to kind of create a story for people so they can wrap their brains around it. I did a lot of really good therapy work, and I would not trade that for anything, the 4 years that I was struggling with my own eating disorder. And I found that while I could heal a lot of things in my brain, and I could cognitively challenge them, and I could learn new ways of being from the rules I was creating in my head, I had a harder time letting things really sink into my body. And there would be times that I felt this battle between what my brain was telling me and my body was telling me. And in my own healing process, and I'm still healing, I've found that one of the only ways to really resolve the stuff that comes up in my body has been to do body work. Where I don't naturally gravitate towards that. I would love to really heal it all up here if I could, but
you've got something that's tight in a joint somewhere, you're not going to release it by thinking about it. You've got to release it physically somehow.
And even for me, it's anxiety. I mean, I would feel sick to my stomach about things and have my body be like responding differently to a situation, while my brain was like, it's not a big deal. We're going to be okay. And my body's like, we're not going to be okay.
Yeah.
It was a fight or flight response. Yeah. And so that was when I started to realize it's like, okay, it's great that my prefrontal cortex is super smart and stuff, but like my body has not connected those dots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing and how you do work with people's bodies.
Yeah, thank you.
It is really meaningful work. But now I guess I'll go into our last 4 questions. Tell me more. Oh, of course, I'm getting all the phone calls. All right. Tell me more about the one of the things you wish you knew when you first started yoga.
I wish I understood more about the mental connection to it. When I first started yoga, I just had a vague notion that, everyone says yoga is good for you and it helps prevent injuries and it's good for you. And when I first started yoga, I was working out, doing all the crazy classes. I was doing all the spin classes and the ultimate strength and cardio and just everything that just seemed like it was going to kick your butt the most. And the only reason that I started doing yoga is because my husband was going through a lot of injuries and he was getting more interested in yoga. And he was like, let's do yoga instead of the cycle class. And I was like, you know what? Okay, for one, it'll help get him to go work out. And for two, it's something I can do with him. And so I would go with him. And then I always was just kind of frustrated with it. I was like, this isn't a hard enough workout. I don't understand why we have to do this. But it turned out to be way more interlocked with everything than I realized. It was, I didn't realize that it was going to be so much in my brain, and I didn't realize that you could make a yoga practice harder than what it was, and I didn't realize all the different facets to it.
And so you kind of wish you'd known that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's just, I'm laughing because I'm like, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, yoga is not hard enough. And that was like... And
it depends on where you go. Sometimes, like when I first started, it wasn't hard enough for me. With the classes I was going to, the teacher I was going to, she didn't teach a hard yoga class. And I was like, and especially for the strength level that I was at, as well as even I have a natural flexibility to me. And so it made yoga easier for me as a beginner than most beginners.
And so you needed something a little deeper, a little more active, maybe.
Yeah, but it could have been that the classes that I started with could have been more challenging for me if I would have known how to make them more challenging.
Right, or even maybe move into the space of, maybe this is mentally healing for me versus the physical aspect of it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have like a yoga-related book or something for people, whether they're yogis or not, that you found to be very helpful for you over the years?
Well, I have all of my yoga books that I used in my yoga teacher trainings that I've been through. The one that both of the major yoga trainings that I went to, both of them required me to have what is the name of that book? It's the one written by BKS Iyengar's kids. And
I'm like, as an outsider, I'm like, I don't know what's the name? What would the last name be? Or
Iyengar.
Iyengar. Okay.
Actually, I think that's the name of the book. Iyengar.
Iyengar. Okay. And is that just on the practice of the movements, or tell us more about the meaningfulness of that book?
Well, I mean, it's more useful probably to a yoga teacher, but it also could be very useful to somebody wanting to know more about yoga. It's got a lot of really great information. It tells you how to modify poses to keep everything in alignment in healthy fashions in a way that isn't taught very often in the yoga classes that I've been to. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen a lot of yoga teachers saying, oh, you need to use a block, you need to use a strap here, you need to use another block or 3 blocks in order to get your alignment correct, and teaching people how to align themselves as often as I would like to see it. And it's really been interesting to me, but it also is really good because in the index it will explain, okay, you can heal irritable bowel symptoms by doing this group of poses, or you can heal cranky neck symptoms by doing this group of poses, or cranky back by doing this group of poses. And so you can go through and find, oh, this is what's bothering me. Oh, I should work on these poses, and it can help with you learning how to self-heal with yoga.
Yeah, so it's really connecting yoga to those physical ailments. And is this the book you showed me that one time? Okay, and even mental health issues as well.
That was
cool
in there.
And like before its time, because this book wasn't created in the last 10 years, right?
Well, no, but Ayurvedic medicine has been around forever, and this book
true.
is intertwined with that. And so this book is not really before its time; it's just before the time of Western medicine, really.
Yeah, it's so true. Our time, rather.
Yeah.
We're a little slow to it, and sometimes I think the words can be scary for people in the West, but yeah, you're right. These have been practices that have healed and helped people for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're like, we need the science, right?
Yeah,
and so I think we've been so slow to it because I think a lot of people needed the science before they'd buy it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. In Eastern medicine, when they use Ayurveda, the doctor might interview you and say, oh, you're... what issues have you been going through? And they'll be like, oh, well, you know what? That's the reason. This argument that you've been having with your husband is the reason that your back is bothering you. You need to make up with him and your back will stop hurting. And yeah, it's really interesting how they prescribe way different types of things over there.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I love that. And tell us more about, has there been any sort of like sayings or quotes or a mantra that has been meaningful to you, whether recently or in the past?
I'm not good at coming up with stuff on the spot. I mean, sometimes things will catch me and they'll stay with me for a while, but I don't have anything in my head today. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. I like to ask that because some people are big quote people and they're like, that's how I live my life,
Yeah.
And then other people, or it could be something that has caught their mind recently. I think even like sometimes I think of like mantras and stuff. My latest one, even, the practice of being mindful in CrossFit that I've tried to really bring to it, thanks to my coach, John, is I can do hard things because my brain immediately goes to, oh my gosh, this workout's going to suck and, all the bad places. And so it's like, I can do hard things has been a meaningful phrase for me lately. So I wasn't sure if anything resonated for you, but sometimes, we're just flowing with life.
Yeah.
Letting it be what it is. And then the last question I have for you is what's a question I didn't ask that might be helpful for people to get to know you or yoga better?
Well, I mean, I didn't really talk about myself very much at all.
There's an invitation to do so.
Yeah. So I let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a huge animal lover, and all kinds of animals. I have 2 dogs. I would love to have some cats, but my husband's allergic. Everything. The other day, somebody that I was working with showed me a picture of a snake that he'd seen in his yard and killed, and I was just like horrified. I don't think any of the animals should be killed. I mean, they're all useful in their own way, and I always feel bad that humans just think that we are the better creature in the world, and we're just destroying it and killing all the other creatures. And I don't know. That's one of the things that really brings me down when I start going down that rabbit hole of thoughts.
Yeah.
But
well, yesterday was Earth Day, so it was kind of even more so relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. What else? Tell us more about you.
What else? I love to help people find what they can find in yoga. I mean, I've had so many yoga clients that are just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that I was having this issue, but my shoulder was cranky and now it's not, and I didn't even know that was going to happen when I started coming to you, and all these different things. I love helping people learn about themselves that way and heal themselves and heal things they don't even realize are injured or that can be fixed. Mm-hmm. What else? Besides being, I'm here to help people. I'm trying to help the world through yoga. I love to help animals. I was raised that way, kind of. My dad was an animal lover too, and so whenever he saw an animal, like there was one time we were out. I don't know why I'm talking about snakes so much today, but there was one time that we were out and we were driving, and he saw a snake in the road, and he went out, stopped his car, went out, and got the snake off the road and into the ditch so that nobody ran over it. Yeah, and I don't know. I just, the animals are hugely important, and I hope that we don't ruin the world for them. Yeah. No, that's a good point to be made, and not one I thought was going to be made in this podcast. Right? But, sometimes things just come out, and I'm glad you shared that with us. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about today, I guess. It's on your brain. Yeah. Yeah. Nora agrees. She's like, make this world good for the animals. Yeah. As we're loving on her. So, well, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain, and at times, probably talk too much on my end, but but thank you for letting me interview you. And I know that I've been kind of picking on my people over here at Soma and saying, hey, like, speak your truth and your wisdom, and it's not always the most comfortable for people. It's not like in their element always to do a podcast or interview. So I'm grateful that you had the courage to come share your wisdom with us. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you invited me. Now I'm internet famous. I don't know. You're internet famous already. Breaking the internet. Yeah, and if you'd ever like to be on, and I can kind of pick your brain even more, I'm happy to have you. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. All right. Until next time. I hope y'all enjoyed the podcast. I wanted to let you know that you can get in touch with Amy by going to somawichita.com. That's SOMAWICHITA.com. And you can also reach her by 316-201-6047. She does one-on-one yoga with clients, and it typically ranges in price from $50 to $60 per session. So if that's something that interests you or your clients, we do try to make it as affordable as possible. We've also been considering small group options where people pay, maybe $25 per session to make it even more affordable, while, yoga is not currently covered by insurance. But just wanted to let you guys know that she is available in our community and would love to work with you or your client population and help you understand how yoga can be so, so very healing.
Until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.